Alright everyone, and welcome to Mr. and Mrs. QuickFlip.com. And this is Matt from Mr. and Mrs. QuickFlip. Just wanted to go over the quick tip of the day and talk about return on investment and net profits when it comes to real estate investing. And as a wholesaler, we're going to be out there selling properties to these cash investors, and they're usually going to do one of two things. They're usually going to buy and hold, or they're going to fix and flip. Now, buy and hold investor, they're interested in return on investment, and fix and flip investors are interested in that as well, but sometimes they're more concerned with the net profit of the deal. And before you kind of get into a deal, you might want to run through these numbers yourself to determine if the deal that you're getting under contract is a good deal. And then ultimately, of course, as you progress your real estate investing career, you're going to be way more concerned with these numbers because you're going to be the one doing the buy and holds and the fix and flip. So you're going to want to know this stuff eventually down pat anyway. So good stuff to learn. So just want to run through a quick couple of slides here to go over how Courtney and I analyze some of these deals and present them to our cash investors. So real quick, just wanted to throw out some commonly used terms in the real estate investing area. A couple of these like ROI, which is return on investment. So we'll get into the definitions of those here in a second. Some guys kind of go back and forth with cap rate, which is capitalization rate, and ROI. Sometimes that's interchangeable. They are slightly different. Cap rate sometimes can mean your net operating income divided by the value of the property, whereas return on investment is net operating income divided by what you paid for it. So we'll jump into that here in a second. Net profit, that's usually say what you sell your property for, and you subtract what you paid for it, and that's your net profit. Cash flow, if you're a buy and hold investor, you're going to be very concerned with your cash flow. So say you buy a house and you have a $500 mortgage on it, and your expenses are another $200 on top of that, so that's $700 out of your pocket each month. But if you can rent that for $1,000, you're still getting a $300 cash flow each month. Debt service, some people throw that verbiage out there. It's really just the same thing as your mortgage payment. It's your principal and your interest. And then just general terms, buy and hold investor, that means you're into the rentals, into landlording. And the fix and flip investor, those are the guys that buy, fix, and sell for a profit, which is usually the case, and hopefully the case, unless you pay too much for it or you spent too much on the fixing part. And then appreciation, when you do buy and holds, you're always hoping for appreciation. So you want to buy low, and hopefully the market starts getting a little better here and property values start going up, but you can't necessarily bank on it because it's never guaranteed. What's more guaranteed usually is cash flow and ROI. If you know what the rents are going to be, and you know what your expenses are going to be, you can pretty much guarantee your return on investment. So another thing you're going to kind of notice once you start getting into this is that people are going to be sometimes more attracted to real estate investing as opposed to, say, the stock market. So it's not uncommon to see 10 to 20% return on investment in rental properties as opposed to the stock market. And then when you're talking about fix and flips, it could be even more than that. It could be upwards to 50%, 60% profit return on investment. So that's usually far exceeding what the stock market is doing these days. So it's become very attractive given the uncertainty of the stock market and other financial markets out there, or other investment or just investing type strategies. So that's why there's a lot of focus being put onto investing in real estate. So you want to be able to articulate that to your investors and say, hey, I can probably show you a way that can beat the stock market and give you better returns than the stock market can. So that's why you want to start learning some of these numbers and the terminology. So start kind of immersing yourself into this kind of stuff, and you'll be that much ahead of your competition, and you'll be that more articulate with your clients to where they feel more comfortable going with you as opposed to maybe another wholesaler, and things will just start happening a little bit better for you, and maybe start making more money, more profits, which is always a good thing, right? All right, so let's jump into this for a minute. Here's a ROI, return on investment example for a rental property. So I'm just going to run through the numbers. I know this is a very busy slide, but just bear with me. I'll go through it here real quick. But just had to throw it all out there just so you guys know what to really need to take account of when you're calculating an ROI for yourself or for an investor. So obviously purchase price, that's always going to be probably the number one number factored in to your ROI is just your straight purchase price. So say you're selling a property to an investor for 40, then hopefully they're paying a closing cost. So that's $1,000 typically on average for a $40,000 property, but that can vary a little bit. Usually for all cash deal, closing costs are pretty low. Then the fix-up cost. This is almost a turnkey property. Just needs a little bit of, say, paint, carpet, and maybe a window or two or a refrigerator, something like that. So you've calculated that to be approximately $4,000. You might want to round that up to 45, but for our example, we'll just leave it at 4. And so that's the total cost that this investor would be in it for, is $45,000. So that's going to be their basis as their cost. So now you need to figure out rent. So get to know the rental figures in your neighborhoods. Know what a 2-bedroom in this shape in this neighborhood goes for $800. So that's what we got here. But get to know the rents. So you figure $800 is going to be the rent. You got to figure out what the taxes are going to be. So you can usually just go back to the prior year taxes and provide that information to your investor. Insurance, you can usually get an estimate there pretty easily. A lot of times it seems to be right around what the taxes are. A lot of times that I see. So for our example, we're going to say 1,000 and 1,000 for taxes and insurance. And then over here on the right, we just have other annual expenses that you need to really take account of. And you can be conservative or you can be liberal with these. And it's probably always better to be on the more conservative side. So say annual maintenance, and that can be repairs and replacement costs of the things that go into a house, like a roof and appliances and carpet, paint. That's stuff you kind of want to take account of, that you're probably going to have to spend over the course of a year. Say you didn't spend any money on a house in 1 year, you'd probably be spending it the next year double. So always kind of build that maintenance cost in there, and I like to go with 10%. Some people go with 5 to 8, but just go with 10. And then a vacancy, because usually your places aren't going to be rented 100% of the time always, and maybe somebody misses a rent payment somewhere down the road. So you kind of want to factor that in. Some people go a little bit lower, but if you go 10% on maintenance and 10% on vacancy, you're going to be giving a very conservative number, which you can make sure you tell your investors that you went very conservative on this. So that's always good. So then you factor in taxes and insurance as well, and your total there is actually going to be, I should say, $39.20. So sorry about that. I have it over here. The total annual expenses are $39.20. So just remember that. So then we get down here to NOI, which is net operating income, and that is going to be your rent times 12. That's an annualized number. So $800 is the rent times 12 months gives you $9,600. So that's your annual net operating income. So now we're going to figure out your ROI. So it's net operating income, and subtract your expenses, divide that by your total cost. NOI, $9,600, minus our annual expenses, $39.20, divided by our total cost that we're into it for, which is $45,000. And then you get your ROI. So it's $56.80 divided by $45,000. ROI is 12.6. Not bad. Not too bad at all. So if you got a house for 40 and you're renting it for 800, it's probably a pretty good deal. And you can obviously play with these numbers here. The maintenance and vacancy costs, taxes, insurance might be a little lower. So you could be around the 15 to 18 percentage ROI on this particular property. So anyway, that's a good ROI, and you'll probably do pretty good with that. Some hedge funds, have a requirement of say 12% or 15%. A lot of them don't factor in taxes and insurance. So if you can take those out of the equation, you can get to 15 to 20% pretty easily sometimes. So anyway, that is that. So just get familiar with these numbers, be conservative, and get good at calculating these very quickly in your head. So when you're talking to an investor, you can spit that out pretty quickly. Now we'll jump to the fix and flip ROI example. So this would be if you're selling a property to a rehab guy, and you want to tell him, how much money he's potentially going to make on this property. Tell him it's a good deal. He'll definitely make some good money. You're going to want to know some different equations here. So here's how we kind of present these. So you figure the purchase price is 40. That's what you're going to sell it to the investor for. And our closing cost is 1,000 again. Fix up cost. This one needs a little bit more. Maybe it needs a new AC or a new roof or something like that. And then we have miscellaneous holding costs. So figure you're going to hold it for 2 to 3 months. So you're going to figure out holding costs, which can include all these things: taxes, insurance, electricity, water, staging, where you might do some decorating, temporary decorating inside the house to make it show better when you're getting it sold. And you get to your resale price, which of 81. So it's a pretty nice little profit there. You're looking at, you're into it for 51.8 and you're selling it for 81, $30,000 profit. But wait, you got to back out the realtor fees, because you probably listed it with a realtor who went ahead and got sold for you for top dollar. So just make sure you back that out. But that's not out of your pocket up front though. That comes out of the sale price. So that doesn't come out of your pocket. So here's how we calculate our net profit, which is going to be our resale price minus what we're out of pocket for, and then minus the realtor fee, which is, when we get to 25,340. Calculating the ROI on that, though, some people are more worried about net profit than ROI. Both of them are pretty important. But for ROI, it's net profit minus your total costs. So it's 25,340 divided by the 51.8, which we're into it for. And the ROI on that's 49% just about, which is awesome. So if you're comparing that to what you might be able to do with the stock market, that's not bad, right? People will do that all day. So it's a good way to actually, if you need to borrow money for this, then there's some more costs, borrowing costs. But if you can present this to a lender and show them that there's $25,000 profit on the back end, it's probably a pretty safe investment for that lender. So, but then you just have to factor in some interest in holding costs on borrowing the money, so that'll take a little bit out of your profit, but still worth it if you put none of your own money into the deal. So we'll probably touch on lending on another episode. So just want to wrap it up. Just a couple of key points to remember. Become a student of this. Get to know return on investment, net profit, get to know the numbers really well. Here's a few things you really just want to focus on. Get to know your cash buyers and your investors that you're selling to. Are you selling to a landlord? Present the landlord ROI. If you're selling to a fix and flip guy, present your property on the net profit. What's their criteria? Do they have a certain minimum ROI that they are looking for? Do they have a certain minimum net profit they're looking for on fix and flip? What neighborhoods are they buying in? Get to know these things. Get to know your after repair values of your houses. Like I said in the crash course, start studying your neighborhoods. You can either work with a realtor on that. You can go to Zillow and your tax assessor website, and all the other different online resources that are available to you. So start researching that stuff. Get to know it inside and out. Get to know the repair costs of your houses. Start getting to know what things cost. If you have access to a contractor, there's probably a couple of them that hang out at your RIA meetings. So introduce yourself to them and pick their brains. Maybe take them to lunch or take them to some of your meetings to look at houses. And they can give you a good idea what things cost. You can definitely just walk around Home Depot every once in a while, do some window shopping, look at what everything is costing these days as far as what windows are costing, doors, toilets, sinks, all the above. There's some good information there. And then always be prepared to deliver good information to your investors on the houses that you're pitching. So obviously you want to know the potential really before you get in, but once you've got a deal under contract, you really want to understand the numbers so you can sell that house to that investor. But you want to give him solid numbers so that he's comfortable with what you're pitching, and then they get more confident in your competence as being a good wholesaler, and bringing value to the community, because this is work that they don't have to do. It's part of the value you bring, and why you get paid to do this is you've done some of that legwork. So do some of this legwork, calculate these ROIs, net profits, and be able to present a nice little package to an investor to say, yep, went through the numbers, this is what it looks like. You're going to be making 15% ROI, or you're going to fix and flip this deal and make at least $20,000. I've ran the numbers, and I was very conservative. So those are my tips for you for the day. Hope that was helpful, and be sure to stay tuned in to future quick tips. And if you haven't already, make sure you go download our free crash course on how to flip properties with no money, no experience, and no credit. It's free. Just put in your email address, and we will be keeping in touch with you guys. All right. Hope all is well, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.